Go.
All right. Welcome to the Art and Design and Horror Gaming stream here. Our awesome panelists are Meredith Gerber, Sam Araya, Lucas Ryan, and Amy Wilkins, and I'm your host, Dani Schmidt. And we're gonna just go around and introduce ourselves. Just real quick, Meredith, you want to start us off?
Sure, absolutely. My name is Meredith. I'm from Chicago. I have 2 cats, very important. My day job is VirtualHorror publisher relations rep. My side hustles are Onyx Path Publishing. I do social media coordinator and also assistant art director, and then Gisbert Games and social media coordinator as well. And I do graphic design and photography on the side.
Word. All right, Sam.
Hello, I'm Sam Araya. I've been working as an illustrator for the Onyx Path and White Wolf since I don't remember that edition that later became Chronicles of Darkness, but that one with Vampire the Requiem.
A long time.
Yeah, a long time ago. I'm so old, man. Right now I'm working as a book cover artist, doing some gallery work as well. I've been nominated for 2 Spectrum Awards. So right now, the ceremony is around 8 p.m. So right now, in abject anxiety, a state of abject anxiety. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm actually from Paraguay. So if I do sound like I'm butchering the English language, yep, I'm doing that.
Awesome. Let's move on to Lucas.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lucas Ryan from Atlanta, Georgia. I've been an animator with Z Animation for about 14 years, doing commercial television animation. I do a lot of freelance illustration. This is my first big step into the horror RPG realm with Gemini Studios and their recently Kickstart-funded Midnight World role-playing game that I'm very excited to be a part of, and have been just steamrolling ahead, making creepy and existentially horrifying art for these very common, placid times.
Wonderful. That was great. Common Blast times. All right, Amy.
Hello, I'm Amy Wilkins. I have been a freelance artist for a couple of years now. You may have seen some of my stuff in Chicago by Night. I've done some stuff for Vampire the Eternal Struggle. Let's see, Cult of the Blood Gods. And currently I'm working on some really exciting stuff. I'm doing some more cards, and I'm doing the cover for the card game, which is going super great, and I'm super proud of it. But yeah, hello.
Awesome. Well, now it's my turn. Heck. I'm Dani Schmidt. I live in New Hampshire. I'm going to the Institute of Art and Design at New England College in Manchester, New Hampshire, getting my second BFA in illustration. Currently, I do a lot of different types of art. I'm a painter, but I also do a lot of like fantasy / like nature study, like ink paintings. I also have a line of digital art and stickers under Seditious Materials. So yeah, I got my fingers in a lot of pots like you guys do. So all right, thanks for joining us, guys. I'm really excited with like all these different people here from like lots of different backgrounds, lots of different experiences. I know I'm gonna learn a lot from you guys, and I have many questions. So I'm just gonna pick one, and we're gonna go for it.
Let's do it.
Cool. So I think like a really good, easy question to kind of like just about art in general is what inspires you? You know, I think it's a good like creative panel icebreaker right there. Does anyone want to start specifically?
I'll go. We can just go in order. Yeah.
We can just do that. We can
That's
just round
fine. We'll just yell it out. It's just like whatever works. What is inspired like people really, and like I know that's like a really like a lot of people say that answer, but like that's really where my inspiration comes from, where like people talk about their memories or the things that make them happy or things that develop any type of emotion. It really is what inspires me, always kicks me off. Most of my art is inspired by people's reactions and emotions to things or their dreams or things like that. I mean, and same with myself too, like obviously like my dreams, my emotions as well, but like it's so much more to me than most things that can communicate. It's just like hearing people's stories and being able to like amplify that really is what inspires me.
Nice.
So for me, I gotta say that one of the biggest things that inspires me is personal experience and symbology and the occult, and how to use that symbology and the occult to process that personal experience. Uh, Also, a lot of my World of Darkness stuff is super inspired by J horror movies like The Grudge, The Ring, One Missed Call. My favorite one, Kaido, Pulse. Never watched the remakes, by the way.
Just a purist.
Yeah. I,
I agree.
I and dream journals, nightmares, and of course, when it comes to role-playing games and tabletop, a lot of the inspiration comes from the game itself and the talented team of writers that are actually putting those creepy scenes for me to visualize and expand upon.
Nice. At school, you keep a dream journal?
Yeah, I do. It's very sporadic right now because a lot of the dreams, sometimes you gotta leave some stuff out.
Yeah, like you don't want to go there, but I mean, I can imagine that's like really good source content.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. One little thing regarding the dream journal thing, and then I'll shut up for a little while. Is that you really have to be a little careful with it in case you are a person who doesn't sleep that easy like me, because it will interrupt your cycle so many times because you will want to wake up, write up on the journal, and then go
Oh,
back to sleep. And you will do that like 6 times in the night, and in the morning you'll be a ghoul, not like a cool ghoul from Vampire the Masquerade, but like a real ghoul.
yeah, no one wants to wake up in ghoul mode.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely like when you were talking about how like your dreams and like experiences, like I take a lot of inspiration with my own work from things that I found brought me joy as a child. I think about either it brought me joy or scared me, because like this, we're talking a lot about all of this in the scope of the horror genre. And I don't personally make a lot of horror art, but I think about those kinds of things, like what scared me, what made me happy, what were my goals and dreams when I was a kid, and that can sometimes like direct where I go with my work. I don't know if you
Yeah,
guys.
I totally agree. I think for me, it's very similar. And I am super inspired by horror. Like I've loved horror ever since I was a little kid. So I know that that's been a huge inspiration, and also, Vampire the Masquerade and finding that sort of artwork that I felt really connected with me. I think also what the others were talking about, personal experience. You paint what you know, you paint what you've gone through and the experiences that you've had, the emotions you felt about certain situations, how it's impacted you. But also I feel like I find a lot of inspiration with like history too, like certain times periods that I am really interested in. Like I feel like I've been really influenced by like ancient Egypt and the imagery that's there. So tons of inspiration that I feel like I draw from every interest that I have, every aspect of my life. So
Nice.
Yeah. For me personally, when I use the word inspire, it deals with what sets me off and gets me excited and going, and that's always having the problem to solve, which being a commercial animator for so long, whenever I work with a client that has a problem that you can actually get your teeth into and go, oh, they don't quite know what to do with this, but there's interesting hooks. I know where to start looking. And that usually starts firing all the synapses for, stuff that I went on a deep dive Pinterest search, weeks ago on, or some odd bit of trivia that I heard on QI, or something that sparks from a movie that I saw in my childhood, or like some old Spielberg or Junot thing, or Brian Froud art from when I was a kid.
You just go on like research binges like a true nerd. That's what.
Yeah. Well, I mean, digest a
I
bunch
do
of
the same thing.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it all comes rushing back when you suddenly have to solve a problem and go, oh, a bit of this and a bit of that, and you jam them all together and then take a different spin on it, and then remember that weird thing that my friend did once and put that in as well. So
I love those like little details. Like, I don't know, like I was doing this illustration for a thing for class, and it was like a big room, and I was like, what's in my bedroom that I can draw and put in here? Like for ideas, like little details like that are awesome from your real life or experiences.
Yeah, I love that we can just like Frankenstein our art from like so many different things.
Yeah. I mean, I'm big into collage work, so I'm all about that. Yeah, so I'm gonna segue to another question here that I'm super interested in, specifically because I think a lot of our audience is mostly into tabletop role-playing games. Thinking about like the art in those books that we all like cherish and like keep sacred in the special like, little bookcase. And I know I do, because they're so pretty. And there's a source of huge inspiration for me as an artist when I go look at books like that. So in thinking about these tabletop game books specifically, what role does design play in making these games feel truly horrific? Anyone want to take a crack at that?
Anyone want to go first this time? Me?
Ladies
Doing it
first.
again. Oh, of course.
Oh, maybe I'm just gonna have to call on people now.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll go. We'll keep up with that order.
Right. Yeah.
I think what's important, especially having done art direction, is words are that the writers create are fantastic, and they give you these like wonderful thoughts and inspires you for your games and things like that. But being able to create the artwork that a lot of these wonderful folks have created, and having an art director communicate that in that step by saying like, hey, let's do these two vampires in a alleyway and it's raining, and it's so many details, and then also having the artist spin on that too. It's so important because it brings those words to a visual sense. It makes it more realistic in my whole opinion. One of the things that I love doing is when I pick up a tabletop book, the first thing I do is look at the artwork, like before I even read anything, before I even do anything. And that's okay if you read writing first, completely okay. But the first thing I do is I'm like, okay, like what's the art style, what palettes are they using, and things like that, because that is important. Because I think that even if a GM is not so much into the art, they still use that for inspiration. And so do the players too, where sometimes they might see, a character and say, I want to be like this character. Like, this is so well done. I know like with Amy's work, like a lot of people have looked at Amy's portraits and been like, oh my gosh, this is the person you've been talking about this whole time. Like, that's so cool, because then you see that visual. And we've had that happen in our games too. So it's just really important in that regard. Bringing like a different life to the words, not life to the words though, because they bring their own. But yeah, that's how it definitely
really sets the mood and the tone. I feel you. Nice. That was a great response. Anyone else have anything to add to that? I haven't actually played a lot of horror games myself.
A lot of the philosophy that I'm trying with the work for the Midnight World is to try and create characters that represent the player characters that are going to be very recognizable in how they're drawn to look a lot like people that you might know already in your life, that folks that are going to feel a lot like people that you went to school with, or that you ride on the bus with, or that you're gaming right across the table from. I wanted to really pull my human characters as much from my own real life around me as that connects me to it, and I feel like I've gotten that kind of response from people that have seen my work for this, that will come to me and say, "Oh, you won't know this person, but that one character looks exactly like my friend blankety blank," and that was so cool, and it made me like connect to it in this very real way. I think with horror, especially if you get too idealized or too generic in your human characters, you can still invite the player to put themselves into there. But if you make people feel like people that they know and recognize and understand have strengths and weaknesses, then they're going to connect and feel ownership and fear for that person and together, and to
Did we lose you? Oh,
superhuman, if that makes any kind of sense.
yeah, no, for sure. I was, when you were talking, I was thinking a lot about
Broke the internet.
oh, oh no. I just hear like broke the internet. Anyway, I was thinking about like archetypes of characters. You know, when you were saying that, how like certain people kind of fall into these archetypes, and you know, how do you represent those and whatnot. Amy, you do a lot of character drawings, is that?
Yeah, that it seems like most of what I do. But yeah, I really liked what Lucas was talking about with not being too far out there with them, like still making them recognizable as just could be an everyday person. You know,
No.
so
My connection is awful right now.
Oh, oh no. Oh, he's probably gonna rejoin the call. We'll let him rejoin.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, as far as what I do, you know, I feel like there's only so much you can do with portraits, and a lot of them don't really have a lot of background going on. So, you know, I like to play a lot with the mood, with the atmosphere, um, shadows, kind of insinuating something with their personality, um, you know, their intent might be hidden, or you know, something like that. And I feel like that can be a really effective way. Also, the color palettes, those are really fun to play with. That can also add a lot to the horror element or the spooky element. So yeah, I mean, it's just for me, it's a combination of those things. Can either, you know, you can paint the exact same portrait with cozy lighting and everything looks very pleasant, and you know, whatever. So it is fun to kind of like flip that to sort of the spookiness.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that one of the biggest things when creating a world that a lot of people kind of forget about it, perhaps, is that when you're creating a world, the richer the world will get, the more different points of view you have regarding that same thing. And what struck me the first time I pick up a Vampire the Masquerade book, for example, second edition actually, uh, was that there was this array of artists all doing different styles, and you know, offering their point of view regarding this particular theme, but they were all follow a certain line, which was this gothic punk horror, but at the same time they were bringing themselves into the art, and that made for a richer experience and a richer world.
Oh,
I
yeah.
totally agree. Yeah.
No, definitely. Like when you bring your own life experiences and your own touch and your own flair to it, that comes out in your work. And that just reminds me of something that we were talking about before we started streaming, was that like RPG books in the past were like very varied, or had a lot of variance with artists and styles and art direction in general. I know you said, Sam, to me that it seems like people are going in more of like a streamlined kind of more almost simplistic version of that now in their designs of these books.
Uh,
Want to speak on that more?
yeah, I wouldn't want to use the word simplistic necessarily, but rather
Like a house
co-
style.
Maybe
yeah,
more
exactly,
cohesive or
cohesive. That's the word. Yeah, that's the word. Which I understand why people want to use that, because it gives your intellectual property a stronger identity, right? uh, that said, I, I still believe, and it still is my favorite thing in the world when I see a bunch of different styles that a book that doesn't necessarily has that cohesion, right? That consistency even. I'm all on the side of being eclectic and having a diversity of styles.
Mm.
One thing, since we are in Gehenna Gaming or Gehenna Gaming, I forgot how to pronounce that. Sorry. One thing that really stuck me, for example, with the Vampire the Masquerade book, was that we have Tim Bradstreet, for example, which has this chiaroscuro noir, hyper realistic pen and ink images. And then you got Joshua Gabriel Timbrook, who did the Clan Spats in second and third edition. I think he actually did for the 20th anniversary as well, which has this a merry manga flavor to it. And that little disparity for me was like it made the world, like how I can have these two things in the same book and showing a different perspective of the same thing, but it's what was the name in music when you have two melodies that are different, but they work together in harmony.
Counterpoint.
Counterpoint, yeah, that's the word. Man, I would be doomed if I've had to do this panel by myself. My English is
I'll be your
yeah,
glossary man.
yeah, awesome. So yeah, that counterpoint to me is like the alchemist gold when it comes to creating a successful world, a successful role playing experience even.
It's so true that I can't remember his name, but the second artist that you mentioned, he did
Joshua
a lot
Gabriel
of
Timbrook.
yes. I think he did a lot of the artwork for the Dark Ages book too. I think the Dark Ages was the first one that I had when I was a kid, and so that is like really prominent in my mind for vampire. And I feel like his style really sort of set the tone for the Dark Ages for me. And then like Tim Bradstreet was more of like the original, or I guess not the original, but the modern day game set. But yeah, that's so true. And I feel like a lot of, because I like a lot of I don't honestly play a lot of tabletop games, but I do love the artwork for them. So yeah, and I totally agree with what you're saying. I like the older style where there's a lot of character. You can really tell the differences between the artists. Not saying that it's bad now or anything, but it is a little bit more cohesive, like what you said. So yeah, I've noticed that too.
Nice. All right. So if anyone has anything else to add to that, I am going to kind of move things along just so we stay on track. Going once, going twice. No. Okay, we're good. Cool. I think the next question that I'm the most curious about, because I'm not specifically like a horror fan. I mean, I like horror, but I would never identify myself as like, oh, I'm super into horror. Like, I love everything about it. Like, I love gardening and like puppies and like bright colors and rainbows. And
We had that
You
discussion
can still like
yesterday.
those things.
Yeah, you can like both
you
things.
can like both things, and I know that. But I want to know: do you have to be a horror fan to make good horror art? What do you guys think about that?
I say no. You don't have to be a horror fan, but I think it helps.
Yes.
And I don't know if it necessarily would help for the end product. I think either way, you'd probably be able to make a great product, but maybe even just the journey for you as the artist would be a lot more fun. You could just sort of play around with these ideas that you already love and just have a really good time making the art. But no, I would say no.
That's fair.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if the important thing is actually that your heart has to be on
Right.
whatever you're doing, because let's face it, at least me, in my experience, I became an artist so I wouldn't have to work for the rest of my life. To
Do something
me,
you love.
Kind of work.
yeah,
You want.
exactly.
Yeah.
And if I was, let's say, if I would become a millionaire, drawing puppies and My Little Pony fan art or whatever, uh, I would be a little bit miserable, I guess.
Is that
So
job
yeah,
available though? Because I'll take it.
$9 for
On
my
it.
little pony artist.
yeah.
You know, for
Let me attach my my price list. No, I mean, I feel that you don't need to be like a horror super fan. I don't think that you need to be watch all the Friday the 13th movies in order and know all the name of the characters and whatever. You don't have to be hardcore, but you just have to have at least a little interest in it. I don't know. There's many ways to approach a thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be an emotional connection. It could be just a problem solving, like how do I create a scary scene that could be a challenge for me. But yeah, as Amy said, it helps a lot. You're a horror fan.
That's a good point. Like coming at it, because I mean, like we're artists, but like we're all designers as well, and so like we're coming at it from like a design problem perspective of like, okay, you know, what palettes make a scary scene? What shapes generally mean danger? Okay, lots of green triangles. Okay, noted.
It's true. That's the secret.
Done.
Don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone. That's the secret.
The cat's out of the bag now.
Green triangles and all your art.
Crap.
Yeah.
Triangles and then just like some purple villains, and that's Disney right there.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh.
I think dipping into bringing up Disney, that my answer to that question is that you don't have to be a fan. You need to appreciate horror. I think that's the big difference, especially for an artist, is to be able to go, oh, when I'm looking at these horror images, when I'm looking at what other people have done before me, what about that is valuable and exciting and interesting? Being able to go, that was a really great way to solve that. That was a brilliant idea, use of spatter, a use of texture, harsh light and dark, to be able to look at the art underneath the horror, to find that in the movies that you're going to, that you don't have to necessarily want to go towards it for entertainment all the time. Your first choice in love might be in going to the Pixar movie instead, and then realizing, oh, Pixar gets into some really existential horror in some brilliant ways. Toy Story 3 set up the most just painful near-death. Like you saw those toys come to grips with their imminent mortality in their eyes. That was the most intense, brilliant horrifying image in this children's family movie that if you can appreciate horror aesthetics, you can start to see where great horror moments happen and things that aren't horror, and you can find what makes the horror that you do visually gravitate towards work that much better. I feel like you also need to know yourself, that you get in, the more you get in touch with what you what squicks you, what bothers you, what you know makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and then explore that and go, all right, why? What's making this happen for me? And why is that real? Is that something that's only about me? And even if it is, that's cool. I'm going to explore that and then put it away so I don't have to keep looking at it. But
Compartmentalize.
allowing yourself to appreciate and get in touch with those things, I think, is very important for really any genre, but especially with horror.
Yeah, I think like you really hit the nail on the head there with that like unexpected sources of like of horror, you know, like where you, I mean, there's a lot of like even just visual tropes or like things that like aesthetically that people think of when they think of horror, you know, skulls and bones and blood and all that. But like I think there's a lot of like nuance and different kinds of imagery that bring horror to mind. You know, like
I feel like those more nuanced things are a little bit more interesting too sometimes.
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
Like if you have a beautiful painting and you, it takes you a minute to notice the spooky thing that sort of makes you uneasy.
yeah,
I love that.
like almost you're getting caught off guard.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like this brings me to another question, kind of going in things organically here. I wanted to know what you guys think from like an aesthetic, you know, perspective. You know, what is scary to you that you put in a lot of things? Like, what is horror to you?
I'll go.
Like,
sure.
So, yeah. Okay. We all are doing the like lean thing, so I'm like, who's gonna go? I'm like, I'll just go. It's fine. Well, I mean, like branching off of like the last discussion too is like everyone's definition of horror is different, and that's kind of an important thing. Like I love horror as a thing, but I'm not one to like we said, like run out the door to the like, you know, the next horror movie. But I always ask my friends what happened because I'm so interested, you know, like I have a best friend who loves horror. And so like, she'll go to all the like horror movies and I'm like, can you just tell me the plot and what happens? And like, what were the imagery and stuff like that? Because that's interesting and fascinating to me. I'm terrified of weird stuff. I'm like pop out scares. I'm the person who screams like at the top of my lungs in the middle of the theater. Everyone else is like chill, like just sitting there and they're looking at me. And I'm just like, that's, you know, always like, I always fall for that.
Jump scare stuff.
Yeah, every time too. Like, and it's so fascinating to watch other people just be calm about it. Like they even like with no like, you know, music coming or anything like that. But yeah, so jump scares, ghosts terrify the crap out of me in media. Like anytime someone goes to a horror movie, I'm like, is there ghosts in there? So I'll be terrified of it, like I mean, all the time.
Another really good example of something that's like very it's like the representation, visual representation of ghosts. Like it could be anything. Like it could be this really cartoony looking thing. It could be someone who looks just like me. It appears to be really inhuman, but is actually a spirit. You know, that like unexpected element is the creepiest thing.
But like ghosts though, and like in the world of darkness and stuff, like the artwork for that is fascinating to me, where I'm like, this is beautiful. These pieces are like gorgeous. Like, look at this composition, look at this color palette, look at what this artist did, you know, whereas like, you know, video media, like in theater and like, you know, movies and things like that, that's terrifying to me. But like seeing it in books is different. I think it's again, like just depends exactly on the subject. So
different experiences for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think that one of the the things that set real life horrors apart from fictional horrors is that fictional horrors are sort of a search for a new aesthetic or a new kind of beauty that is different from what we are accustomed to see. At least that's what I say every time I use the I need to explain why I use the words dark art to define my work. Is like I know what the popular and new aesthetic of idea or new idea of beauty it is, and I reject that, and I looking for a new kind of beauty within that dark subconscious. And the reason we are looking at it and believing it's horrible or terrible is perhaps we haven't we haven't give it a chance, or we are being educated in terms of this is beauty, and everything that goes away from this framework, it isn't. I don't know. I'm getting into deep bullshit right now, but that that's what I think. Because, for example, I don't watch the news. It depresses me. If I watch the news for a week, I'm gonna kill myself. But I can watch Hereditary. I can watch Midsummer. I can watch The Exorcist and all that, because I know there is an intention behind it, and that intention uh, is actually, how to say, it's an aesthetic intention, right? It's a storytelling intention.
Visual
It's
storytelling. Yeah.
yeah. It's not. I'm gonna say, and don't quote me on this, but it might be that the real life horror and violence, it's it's terrible, right? But the fiction horror and the horror art and all, it has a meaning behind it. It has a point that wants to make,
Yeah.
either be to entertain you, scare the shit out of you. Sorry, I just said
I,
profanity.
I
Allowed. It's allowed. They
Wow.
they said it 2 panels ago that it's
Oh,
allowed, so it's allowed.
oh man, I should have started early.
We should have told
Ease
you.
into it.
It's essentially that there's a beauty behind horror that obviously can be appreciated, but by everyone. But once you get to know it, it becomes something very rewarding, and very I'm afraid to use that to use this word, being a commercial artist myself, but anti-establishment even.
yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Um, yeah, I want to comment more. Like, I want to talk more about this, but I
We
do.
can all hang out after and
Yeah,
talk
no,
about
I'm
it.
just
That's
kidding.
fine.
I could go on tangents about this forever. You guys are making some awesome points and bringing up some like really cool stuff that like I haven't even totally thought about. But I'm gonna move on to like a slight topic change, because I do think some of our viewers here might be either like emerging artists or young artists, kind of like me in my position, where I'm looking to get into doing illustration and art for either tabletop books or just games, maybe video games, or you know books in general. Do you guys have any advice for people who want to get into the field that you're in? Meredith, take it away.
Yay, we're doing this. We're doing the order. It's happening. So 2 things. One, it's going to be more so on like my experience with the tabletop industry, because that's my main job at Drive Through. But the other is with Onyx Path too. The one thing I will say is, if you are wanting to, and all of the other wonderful people on this panel can like kind of fill in how this works, but when you are like, hey, I want to work for Onyx Path, like I have loved, Geist Destinators or Mage the Awakening for so long, and I just want to do art for it. my number one thing is, if you are going to a company, you have to read the guidelines on their website. It is the most important thing that, you know, it's obviously not like part of like the artist process, but like it's very important, because a lot of times people just send in portfolios and we're like, this is cool. What, you know, like, why didn't you didn't follow the guidelines though? Like, because that's not fair. So like, follow the guidelines, have a good portfolio. It doesn't have to be 3,000, you know, pieces, but like more than one is good. That's very important too. And like, try to show like some diversity, and be proud of your work too. That's the biggest thing. Be confident when you like write us and when you come to companies and things like that, and you should be proud of it. It's very important. And don't feel bad too if you don't get it right away. That's the other thing, is like, some artists will apply for company A and they don't hear back, or they never interact, but they go to company B and company B will talk to them. Like, don't get discouraged, just keep going. So those are my pieces.
Awesome. Thank you.